So this morning I woke up and I smelled something really good. And I thought, what's that smell? Oh wait, I know, it's cinnamon rolls.
Hello, welcome to the Chemistry Corner, where today we're going to be making cinnamon rolls. For this recipe you need 4 cups of flour, a quarter cup of sugar, 1 packet of dry instant rise yeast, 6 tablespoons of butter, 4 egg yolks and 1 whole egg, 6 ounces of buttermilk, some cooking spray, some salt. For the filling of these cinnamon rolls you need some brown sugar, a tablespoon and a half of butter, some cinnamon, and then for the icing you need cream cheese, milk, and powdered sugar. To start the dough recipe for the cinnamon rolls, we need to mix our egg yolks, sugar, the melted butter, 6 tablespoons from before, and the buttermilk together. We'll move this flour out of the way. Then we're going to mix that till it's combined. Oh, we just finished up mixing these egg yolks. Next, we're going to take our flour, about 2 cups, the yeast, a couple sprinkles of salt, then we're going to take that, dump it into our bowl, and start whisking for a little bit. So we combined all these ingredients, but because we have to add another 3/4 cup of flour, we're going to have to upgrade to a bigger weapon. So no more whisk. Now we're going to use a spoon. So we're going to add in the flour and really stir for about another 5 minutes. While we're mixing it right now, we're getting the gluten developed. Soon, we're gonna dump it on the table, and then we're gonna put some flour down, and then we're gonna start kneading it by hand. All right, welcome back. So now after we finish mixing this for a little bit, we're gonna sprinkle some flour on the table, just evenly. All right. Then we're gonna take our dough, get some flowers in the paws too. So then grab. Alright, now we need to knead it for a little bit. Just get all that gluten going. Line up the flour. In a little bit, we'll explain the science behind that. And make sure you don't use too much flour because you don't want to get all weird, but you need enough to keep it from sticking like that right there. You need a little bit more. Alright, so now we have our dough nice and kneaded. So we just want to make it into a nice ball, nice and tight, and then take our bowl, spray a little bit of oil in there. Spray the ball so it's nice and lubed up. Put it in the bowl. Spray the top so it can rise nicely. So then just make it nice and roll. Alright, so we're gonna pop it back in. So now we're gonna cover that with saran wrap, nice and loose, put a nice warm area, and let it rise for 2 hours. All right. While the bread is rising, we're gonna talk about some chemistry involved in this recipe. So first we have glucose, yeast, ethanol, and CO2. Ethanol and CO2 is what is released by the yeast. It's like a fermenting process like you see in beer, or in this case, bread. And the molar mass of this sugar is 180 grams, the CO2 is 44. We found out that 1 gram of sugar gives you 0.244 grams of CO2 released with the yeast. And then we found out that 1/4 cup of sugar weighs 55 grams. So therefore 1 gram of sugar gives you 0.244 grams of CO2. Then we have to multiply 55 by 0.244 to get 13.4 grams of CO2 released total. And there are going to be 18 rolls, so each roll produces 0.745 grams, which is just 13.4 divided by 18 to get 0.745 grams. Now we have to use PV equals nRT, which is pressure times volume equals moles times the constant and temperature in Kelvin. So now we have to find our moles. So first we assume that the pressure is at STP, where that equals 1 atm, and then the room temperature is 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which equals about 21.1 degrees Celsius, which we then convert to Kelvin, which is 294 degrees Kelvin. Then we convert grams of CO2 to moles of CO2. So we do the gram to mole conversion, which is 0.745 grams of CO2 over 44.01 grams per mole, which is the gram to mole ratio. And then we find that equals 0.0169 moles of CO2 per centimeter. So then we have to plug it into PV equals nRT. So that's 1 atm times X amount of liters of CO2 released equals 0.0169 moles of CO2 times the constant of 0.08206 times 294 K. So that we get each cinnamon roll produce 0.408 liters of CO2, and the CO2 is released by the yeast, which makes the cinnamon rolls rise and really give off a good smell with the ethanol and the CO2 overall.
Now we'll talk about yeast. Yeast is a unicellular plant that metabolizes simple sugars and turns them into alcohol and CO2, also known as fermentation. Different species are used for different processes, like bakers use different yeasts than breweries do. Best growth happens at 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, but room temperature will do. Yeast budding is a process where new organisms are formed by the protrusion of parts of other organisms. When the yeast buds, one cell becomes two, therefore reproduces. Next, we'll talk about kneading. As dough is kneaded, the proteins line up and strands of gluten form to create matrix. The matrix creates strength and structure and traps the gases, allowing it to rise.
Each cinnamon roll contains 284 kilocalories, which equals 1,190 kilojoules. Therefore, each 64-gram cinnamon roll gives you 1,190 kilojoules when you consume it, which is a lot of heat given off. The reason cinnamon rolls give off a lot of energy when consumed is because of the calorie-dense food. While the cinnamon rolls are baking, there is caramelization that takes place, and that is 2C12H22O11 that goes to 4H2O C24H36O18, which is carmelan. Then, with continued heating, it goes to 3C12H22O11, which goes to 8H2O C36H50O25, which is carmelan. Continued heating yields carmelin, which is C125H188 and O80. Caramelization is the oxidation of sugar and is used in baking for the nutty flavor and brown color. It is a type of non-enzymatic browning reaction. As the process continues, volatile chemicals are released, creating the iconic caramel flavor and color. This process involves getting rid of water and breaking down the sugar. The caramelization reactions are dependent on the type of sugar that is used. Volatile equals easily evaporated at normal temperatures, and non-enzymatic reaction equals a chemical process that produces a brown color in foods without the activity of enzymes.
Now we'll make the filling. Start off with a cup of brown sugar, a tablespoon and a half of melted butter, a tablespoon of cinnamon, and a few sprinkles of salt, and then mix together. Now we're going to prepare the cinnamon rolls. The first step is to butter a 9 by 13 inch glass baking dish with some butter. Now that the pan is buttered, you can set that off to the side and grab your surface where you're going to roll the dough out. You can start by putting some flour down. and make sure to get flour on your hands so the dough doesn't stick. Now that the dough has doubled in size, you can put it on to the surface area. You're going to spread it out. And then you have to make it a 12 by 18 inch rectangle. Now that the dough is in a 12 by 18 inch rectangle, you can take some butter and a brush and brush it on the dough, leaving a 3/4 of an inch border around the outside. Now that the butter is applied to the dough, you can take the sugar and cinnamon mixture and apply it the same way that the butter was, leaving a 3/4 inch border on the outside. Now the dough is ready to be rolled. Start with the longest side towards you and roll it tightly. Once you've finished rolling out the dough, you can cut it in half and then keep cutting the halves in half until you get your desired size. After cutting them, we found that cutting them into 16 pieces is about the right size. So you can take the piece you cut and set it in the baking dish. As you can see, we left a little room in the baking dish for when we set them aside to rise for 2 hours.
We've let the cinnamon rolls rise for the 2 hours of time. And now we're gonna put them in the 350-degree preheated oven for 30 minutes, or until like the golden brown.
Now that the cinnamon rolls are cooking, we can start on the icing. We have 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 4 ounces of cream cheese, and 3 tablespoons of milk. Now with an electric mixer, you can mix it together on low.
Now that we have the cinnamon rolls done, took approximately 25 minutes. The last step is to ice those puppies. Now that we have those iced, the last thing to do is cut and enjoy. Thank you for joining us on the Chemistry Corner.